Whilst I have of course reviewed several Webleys, and whilst I know they're all part of the same group, a lot of guys have felt I needed to be reminded in the comments, which is cool. That isn't the problem. The problem is I was also handed the latest Air Arms Ultimate Sporter with a fitted regulator, a gun which is more than 3 times the price of the Kral. So a direct comparison is out of the question, but it does raise some questions. Hello and welcome to AAR on Air. Today I have the Kral Webley Kral Puncher NP-02, a short, high-capacity budget PCP that is, as already mentioned, a third of the price of one of its competitors' guns. So what does it have to offer for its £350 UK price? Walk around first then. It has an overall unsilenced length of 82 centimetres and weighs 2.95 kilograms unscoped. It is almost pistol-like, with an air cylinder stuck on the back. This gives a huge 530 cc's of air capacity, which should be more than enough shots to result in blistering to the trigger finger, certainly if it was shot all at once. If you did take this cylinder down to nearly empty, you would better have a compressor or a diver's tank to refill it, or muscles like the Incredible Hulk if you're going to use a stirrup pump. But if its high shot count is what you want, this could be right up your street. It has a 30 centimetre barrel which is threaded for a silencer, but there isn't one supplied in the case, and without it, it has quite a bark. That's not always easy to pick it up on mic, but we'll see if it makes a difference. So, silencer on there. I'm just using a Viroc silencer, considerably quieter, so you will definitely need to budget for a silencer. Moving down from the front, there is a manometer under the barrel, which is very clear and easy to read, but it's been put where you have to look down the business end to read it. Not a favourite of mine, but this does appear in this place on quite a few rifles, sadly. The filler port is just behind the gauge and has a nice twist dust cover to keep out mud and dust, etc. Moving back, we come to the rather chunky mahogany hardwood stock. This is a one-piece item and has plenty of stippling to aid grip. It also forms the trigger guard and flows back to a rather curvaceous pistol grip. I won't say ergonomic because they've made this ambidextrous, which means trying to fit either handed grip, it doesn't fit either that well. That said, it isn't uncomfortable, just a handful. Naturally, this means no thumbs up shooting position. The trigger is a 2-stage metal item with a pull weight of 3 pounds on this one. It does have quite a nice feel to it. Moving upward, on the left hand side we find the side cocking lever, which is quite strange to have it on the left. It's great for left-handers, but not so much for right-handers. Maybe that's a personal choice. The thing to point out though is that this is not transferable over. On the right hand side there is a nice solid click safety with clear, safe and fire. But it is recessed quite highly into the wooden stock, making it a little harder to access. Now also on top there is a power adjuster. And this is the sub 12 foot-pound UK spec gun. So I'd be interested to find out what the power range is on this when I hit the chronograph with it later. As I've said, the adjuster is on the right hand side and is sunk again into this rather chunky stock, restricting accessibility a little. You'd really struggle with gloves. The indicator, however, is on the left hand side. Continuing back down the gun, we come to that plastic stock that shrouds the oversized air cylinder, and that helps to give this thing the high capacity. This shrouding also incorporates an adjustable rubber butt pad, which is a nice touch. Naturally, you're going to need a scope for this, but be warned, don't go too big. Not if you want to fit it back in the hard case that is supplied. Now this is not an overly large scope and it only just fits back into the case when fitted. The good news though is there is plenty of room for a silencer in there. There are 2 supplied magazines and a single shot tray. The magazines are 14 round items in 177 and require quite a complex loading method that, until you've practiced it, is likely to result in either damaging your digits or mutilated ammunition. That said, with practice it is possible to load these without too much drama, and they do the job at the end of the day. The first thing you have to do is rotate the magazine front and then drop in your first pellet, but be careful because it wants to fall all the way through the back and then it'll jam when you're moving. From there on, rotate and drop each pellet in and keep going until you've got all 14. It then locks back into place and shoots them in reverse order, but you do have to watch that last one that it doesn't jam itself up. So let's take a look at that power adjuster now. It must be chrono time. There are basically 5 markings on the infinite wheel. So I simply turned to each mark and fired a string of shots off to get an average. The results using 8.44 grain 177 pellets are: on maximum power, which I'll call notch 5, gave an average of 749 feet per second. Notch 4, 746. Notch 3, which was the middle, 604 feet per second. On notch 2, 407 feet per second, and on the lowest, the minimum, notch 1, 458 feet per second. The immediate thing you notice is that the notch up from minimum gives a lower feet per second than the minimum notch. Other than that, the max feet per second I saw during testing was 752 feet per second, giving 10.6 foot-pounds or 14.37 joules, and the lowest was 402 feet per second, giving 3.03 foot-pounds or 4.11 joules. I'm never sure what the real purpose of these dual power features have on a sub 12 foot-pound rifle. And in this case, it can't be for saving air, because the cylinder on this thing has enough air in it to form an atmosphere on a small planet. The only reason I can think of is if you are target shooting at short range in a close to neighbour backyard situation. But maybe some of you guys can let me know if I've missed something here. Target time then. Usual 40 metre range, looking for grouping capabilities more than bullseye hitting.
Meanwhile, back here in the studio.
Well, maybe not pellet on pellet, but this hadn't been leaded in, and I was only using a budget scope for the test. I think it's capable of better results than I've just achieved. Conclusion. It must be said you're getting a lot of gun for your money. A huge air cylinder, 2 14 round magazines, single shot tray, hard case to boot, wooden stock and a reasonably accurate sub 12 foot-pound performance. As a standalone gun, all of the above mentioned in a PCP rifle is pretty good going. I can't talk reliability sadly because I haven't had this long enough to pass any form of judgment. But you get good and bad guns from all manufacturers. I know, I've had problems with some £2,000 plus airguns of my own. You will need to budget for a silencer in the package, as we've already said, especially if you want to take this thing hunting or if you want to keep it quiet from the neighbours. So, not bad value for money really, but back to that comparison. I suppose this is glass half full or half empty thing really. You could look at it and say this is a bargain at less than a third of the price of the air arms. Or you could say the air arms is expensive at over 3 times the price of this. But it's like hi-fi. You can spend £300 on a pair of speakers or £1,000 on a pair. The more expensive ones may not sound 3 times as good, but the sound quality will be better. The increase is less and less the higher price you go. But the finish is better, the construction is better, and the action is smoother. It is obvious more money has been spent on better components and research and development and ultimately finish. Everything about the air arms in this example is that little bit tighter, but you don't need to spend as much money if all you want to do is take out a few woodies or rats or simply have a bit of fun plinking in the back garden with the family or your mates. And certainly you then won't have to worry about the extra money it's cost you. It may simply be that £1,150 is out of your price bracket. And because of that, I for one am glad Kral have produced this little gem. I think it represents really good value for money.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next week on AAR On Air.